Right here in the U.S., thousands of kids are trafficked and prostituted. If you think these aren't our kids, you're wrong. These are our kids, our friends' kids, our neighbors' kids, kids with low self-esteem, who are just looking to belong, that are easy prey to pimps and traffickers.
My friend, she was really upset. She was like, I think he's really going to be upset if we don't have any money. And so we had to keep going to trucks. And sometimes we would stop and we would cry.
These children are cut off from their families. They suffer violence and sexual abuse.
And I just wanted to die. And I started to just think that maybe I deserved this for doing this to my parents and to myself.
These kids are not criminals. They are victims. We all have to help them and give them what they need to go from being victims to survivors.
I was 13 years old when the trafficker started to sell me for sex.
We call it shopping season. I was the lead recruiter, working under a head pimp. We used to go to schools, football games, parties, playgrounds, churches, even colleges, anywhere where I could go to befriend someone's kid, lure them in with love and affection. But it was all a lie.
Our family moved every couple of years, so I didn't really have any close friends. And when a handsome older boy asked me to hang out, I was flattered. And then when he asked me to share some pictures, I eventually said yes. He threatened to show them to my parents and classmates, put them online, and he said I'd have to earn the pictures back.
Pimps used to brag about, we can get anybody. It wasn't just girls, it was boys too.
The number one reason for trafficking is homelessness and runaway behavior. There's thousands of young men and boys out there that are being trafficked, and we want to let them know we hear them. There's a lot of social pressure to be manly and not to express any sense of victimization at all, so that pressure keeps them underground.
It's called sextortion. I'm one of the thousands of survivors. It's a crime that can happen to anyone, and with younger and younger kids with cell phones and social media, it's just getting worse.
But there are forces for good working to counter this horrific crime. Unitas works to prevent labor and sex trafficking and provides opportunities for survivors to thrive. We help raise awareness through events and online campaigns, and we create and implement prevention education programs in schools in Eastern Europe and the U.S.
I stand with Unitas.
I stand with Unitas.
I'm helping Unitas.
We're asking you to help Unitas reach children before the traffickers do.
Told you a little bit about us, that our mission, that we're dedicated to educating, inspiring, and mobilizing the Americans about the vital works that the United Nations does. And also, we work on the 17th Sustainable Development Goals, as far as we're oriented to SDG 5. Here are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Number 5 is for gender equality, and also human trafficking is included in that. We've more recently added number 6 for clean water and sanitation, working on forever chemicals, PFAS. Here we are getting ready to go to the Capitol to lobby for UN funding, because the UN funding goes to a lot of agencies to help a lot of people. I'm right where his hand is raised up. Sorry, trigger finger. Right where his, that's me right there. So anyway, we make a big impact on our issues, and we do support some bills. This is a book that was written, he prefers to call it the UN Association, and here he is with Eleanor Roosevelt. Also, the reason that we work on the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, that we're actually working on that now. Article 6 is to take all appropriate measures, including legislation, to suppress all forms of trafficking in women and exploitation of prostitution of women. It took 2 years to pass the House resolution, and we were fortunate to have the help of State Representative Jim Wayne, and we got that passed. But the SDG 5 is for gender equality and empowering women and girls, and also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 4, is freedom from slavery. Here we are with the CEDAW, with the Mayor Fisher signing the cities for CEDAW, but the one I showed you before, we actually went to the state legislature and got states for CEDAW, the first ever. But there are many more times of slaves, many more today than there were many years ago. And sometimes it's called contemporary or modern day slavery or human trafficking. But we all know that it's a big enterprise of $150 billion and has risen to second place under drugs and affects many lives. It did that in 2016. But trafficking is occurring all over the 50 states, as well as you can see here where Kentucky, I'm sorry, I can't operate this too well, where Kentucky is and how much we have in here going on. It's because of our central location and also our expressways make it easy to get in here. But worldwide, there's more than 40 million people enslaved, and 1 in every 4 victims is a child. About 1/3 of them, 1/4 of them, 30%, 1/3 are boys, men and boys, and 71% women and girls. We also look at the observances that we have, and the one observance is the UN International Day for the Abolition of Slavery in December, and then January 11th was actually created by the U.S. Senate to recognize the date of January 11th as Human Trafficking Day, but the entire month as Human Trafficking Month. So if you look at the different countries, also the July 30 is the UN World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. But you look, there's every time I try to do that, I go forward. It's close together. But anyway, you look, there's Russia, China, Iran, Belarus, and Venezuela. And then if you look in the United States, you have California, Texas, Florida, and New York. So I always liked what Secretary John Kerry back in 2016 said about the modern day slavery is a global industry which exploits tens of millions of people and generates the revenue estimated at more than $150 billion annually, per a report by the International Labor Office, a UN agency. And this particular quote, "Those numbers should shock the conscience of every person into action. In the 21st century, we should never be allowed to put a price tag attached to the freedom of another human being." So what is human trafficking? Well, it's really a business. It's stealing freedom for profit And in some cases, the traffickers are going to trick, defraud, or physically force victims into providing commercial sex. And other victims are lied to, assaulted, threatened, or manipulated into working in inhumane or illegal activities. It is this multi-billion-dollar criminal industry that denies freedom to so many people. So here we're looking at the hotline data in the United States, 2020, the most recent. And you can see the line where the first row is the hotline calls, and then the second row is the number of victims. You have to remember that when you make a call, a hotline call, you may, and you've seen something, you may actually be helping many other people. And so when you look at this, the total, the 10,583, but yet there were over almost 17,000 victims that were helped. So your one call can make a big difference in someone's life. So Polaris came out with this typology, different types of modern day slavery in the United States, and they had 25 of those. But looking here, you see that, you see here that the escort services and pornography are really high. And then the illicit massage, health and beauty, and then residential-based commercial sex, personal sexual servitude, outdoor solicitation. They had cases of this in Bowling Green with kids out selling, I think it was candy bars. And then domestic work, and also emerging types. And it really surprised me that bars, strip clubs, and cantinas are less, and then other illicit activities. So what's happening online and during sheltering? They're always looking to exploit vulnerable people. And of course, the internet is tops for recruiting victims. And these strip clubs, foster homes, and schools have decreased measurably. It's your Facebook and Instagram that has increased 120% to recruit potential victims. Then you have the familial recruitment by a family member or a caregiver greatly increased also. I'd like to say we had a recent speaker who was a victim of familial trafficking from the time she was 4 years old. She has turned her life around, and she has helped. She is up to her 1,000th victim that she's worked with, and she teamed up with foster homes, which I think was a really good idea. And she was really making a mark on her world, created Phoenix Rising, and is continuing to help young people. Then you also have the intimate partners or marriage proposal has also increased. And in the labor recruitment, you have the 69% potential or current employer, 15% by your family member, and 5% a marriage proposal. Well, the good news is it's friends and family that have had the access point to help 40% of identified victims. So that's terrific news, and you can do it too. You can help someone. So in Kentucky, there have been over 3,000 calls and 1,000 victims. And the human trafficking cases discovered were 806, and with the victims it was 940, which was considered high. And then more current statistics, these really sort of mirror what we had in 2019. The calls that went in, the number of cases that we had, the moderate indicators, the calls actually came a lot from victims and survivors. So the types of trafficking, 73 sex out of the 104, 73 sex, 17 labor, 6 sex and labor, and 8 unspecified. So the places for the sex trafficking was pornography, illicit massage, the spa, online ads, hotel, motel-based, and 3 other. The places of labor trafficking were traveling sales crews, agriculture, illicit activities, domestic work, and transportation. In the gender, 82% were female, 15 male, and 3 were gender minorities. So when you look at the ages, there were 64 adults and 34 minors. The citizenship, 9 foreign nationals and 5 U.S. citizens. The reports, 71 and 25 access service referrals and 8 request crisis assistance. So the contacts totaled 305 from 101 victims, 59 community members, 26 other, and NGO, non-governmental organization representative. I really like this because I sort of consider the 59 community member in the same boat with the NGOs, and so that was like 80%. I mean, that's really great, and 15 in the medical profession. So I'm just going to run through some signs real quick for you. So basically, but if you think something's wrong, you need to ask yourself some questions. If you see some bruises, if you see other signs of physical abuse, if there are signs of psychological abuse, if a person is submissive or fearful. And that's one thing I really didn't think that in the beginning, I didn't think that a trafficking victim would seem so submissive and fearful, but that is actually the case. And is the person being controlled? Are they deprived of food, water, sleep, medical care, or other life necessities? Is the person allowed to be in public alone? Can the person freely contact friends or family? Is it a minor engaged in commercial sex? Does a minor appear to be in a relationship with a much older person? Is the person fearful of his or her employer? Can the person leave their job situation if they wanted to? Has someone threatened the person's family? Does the person have their identification? And does the person know his or her address? So some of the red flags of potential indicators of trafficking. Again, it's their behavior and their reported age. They may say, I'm 21, when really they're 15. And, you should be suspicious if you see something like that. Evidence of sexual trauma, multiple and frequently sexually transmitted infections. Doctors should pick up on this more than they probably do. Excessive large number of pregnancies, tattoos, or other types of branding. The use of slang relating to involvement in prostitution, and evidence of control or a dominant relationship. Malnourishment or generally poor health, mentally as well as physically. If they're not free to come and go at will, if they're under 18, providing the commercial sex, if they have a pimp or manager, if they're not paid very much for what they do, if they work the long or unusual hours, if they don't get breaks, if they live where they work, if they owe a large debt and they're never able to pay it off, if they were recruited through false promises, oh, we're going to make you a model, but then that doesn't happen, then they end up using the person, for sex. The nature and condition of their work, the high security measures exist in the work and our living conditions. If you can't see into the house, if they have all their windows closed, the windows are boarded up, the security cameras, that should be a red flag. So is also, like I said, if they're living and working on the site and they don't get to leave. If they get verbal or physical abuse by the person over them, if they're not given proper safety equipment to do the job that they're supposed to do, if they don't get paid directly, and if they're forced to meet certain daily quotas. So the screening questions for minors, and the minors are identified as less than 18 years old. If you did have an opportunity, these are some of the things that you might look at. Where is the person sleeping? Is there any debt bondage? You know, do they buy them a hamburger and then say, you owe me for that hamburger? And, you know, the tab just keeps going up and they can never come free of that money that they owe if they don't have their identification. And, you know, you can ask about their working and living conditions, you know. Are you able to come and go as you please? Has anyone ever physically harmed or threatened you? Are you required to ask permission for physical necessities? Are you forced to have sex or perform sex acts? So short-term effects would be higher risk behaviors like using drug or alcohol abuse, and sometimes these are foisted upon people. They don't choose to take drugs, they don't choose to drink alcohol, but they get emotional exhaustion and impaired judgment, even a depersonalization, fearful, anxiety, and nervous, and muscle tension. So long-term effects could be post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, trauma bonding, severe depression, suicidal ideation, spiritual questions, and feelings of being mentally broke, sexual dysfunction, and difficulty establishing and maintaining relationships. But human trafficking is different from smuggling. So, you know, that is totally different. And it's always better if you never approach a person. If you see something, just observe and get as many details as you can, and then call the human trafficking hotline. You don't want to put yourself in jeopardy, and you don't want to put that person in jeopardy either. So be sure and inform law enforcement of your suspicions. If it's an immediate threat, you can always call 911. So each year, as many as 100 to 300,000 American children are at risk of being trafficked for commercial sex in the United States. The average girl age is 12 to 14, and with boys, it's 11 to 13. So we have some laws to help with human trafficking. One of the KRS, which is Kentucky Revised Statute, is when someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to cause a commercial sex with an adult or minor. And in 2013, they no longer had to have proof of force, fraud, or coercion for anyone that was under the age of 18. It took a while for that to trickle down for people to realize that. The labor trafficking is when someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to cause an adult or minor to perform labor or services. And these services may be performed for no money, less than minimum wage, or to pay off a debt. The one bill that passed in 2017 requires public schools to display the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and I have a copy of that over at the table. So in the human trafficking, if a person is guilty, a person is guilty when they intentionally subject one or more persons to engage in forced labor or services, commercial sex activity through the use of force, fraud, or coercion, except that with that one exception, if they're under 18, they don't have to involve force, fraud, or coercion. The human trafficking is a Class C felony unless it involves serious physical injury to a trafficked person, in which it becomes a B felony. And if the victim of human trafficking is under 18 years of age, the penalty for the offense shall be one level higher than the other unless specified. So here is the list of the Class C and how it can be bumped up to a Class B. And also the promoting, I know Summer mentioned the Ghislaine case, and you know, if you take part in promoting and recruiting people for sex trafficking, then that is a crime. So when we look at these, here are the listings of them, but you know, this is not near enough, And we would like to have a bill for human trafficking to be a violent crime and for the perpetrators to have to serve 85% of their sentence. Currently, they're only serving about 15%, which is nothing when you take a child that's just a few years old, and then the perpetrator can get out in not very long. I'm not going to spend time on this, but just want you to know this is the federal legislation, and I meant to have handouts for you, and I forgot to do those last night. But anyway, a lot of the laws come from the federal legislation as well. There's a couple of pages of it here. So, but anyway, I can provide those to you either online or get them to Debbie or Joanne. But anyway, in 2007 was the first Kentucky law. It's really not that many years ago, to make human trafficking a crime and granting rights to the victims of human trafficking. And then in 2013, they passed the Human Trafficking Victims' Rights Act, and that really strengthened some penalties and set up the safe harbor and a pathway to services for child victims. This law created a robust legal structure to bring about justice in cases of human trafficking, and then it also had that amendment that we spoke about for anyone under the age of 18. The other statutes have to do with the Kentucky law that tells you, it mandates you, you really don't have the option. You are supposed to report any person with this. You're supposed to, when you are suspicious that a child is being trafficked for sex or labor, that's suspicion. If immediate danger, you can call the 911. Don't attempt to assist the victim. But the National Human Trafficking Hotline number, and we have bookmarks over here with that number on it, 1-888-373-7888, or they can text, be free, or 233-733, or they have live chat, and that live chat probably went live, I don't know if it was a couple of years ago, but now everything is 24/7, which is wonderful. And that's it. And I'll be back later, so you know, if people have questions during break, I'll be here, and I'll be here later to talk a little bit more. Thank you.